Well, comrades, brothers and sisters, I'd like to welcome you all in Britain and worldwide to what promises to be a tremendous event that is socialism. And it really represents a landmark in the struggles of a certain section of working people to arm each one of you and us with an analysis of what is happening in this trying time in Britain and internationally. I've been active in the labour movement for more years than I care to remember, of decades, but never have I experienced, like many of you of the older generation, a crisis like this, which is multifaceted, which has had a devastating effect on the health of millions of workers of a pandemic. Now there's a certain relief promised in relation to the development of a vaccine, but the other side of this is already we have evidence that the rich are trying to gain the benefits of this and to line their own pockets, certainly at the expense of ordinary working people in Britain and worldwide. It represents really what is organic to capitalism, and that is the inevitable looting of the state of the resources of you and I that have been built up over a long period. They cannot help that. On a TV programme here last night, when one of these people was challenged why she was making millions out of the pandemic and out of this vaccine, she objected, well, we're in a partnership with big business, with the state. And actually, what that reveals is the character of the economic situation that exists now, which is a barrier to us exploiting all the marvellous developments of science and technique which we are responsible for. That is the working class and the labour movement itself. All the manic tendencies of capitalism have come to the fore in this pandemic. The Guardian, for instance, this very day, that's the British Guardian, has carried the report of where a leading opponent of Trump in the US actually has characterised Trump as a new George III, who, as we know, was opposed to the idea of the independence of America and actually has sacked this individual or threatened to sack him. The Johnson regime in Britain is not much worse, is not much better rather, than the regime of Trump in America. It's more like, if you like, a combination of Nero in ancient Rome and Rasputin, part of the court camarilla, that betoken that was around the Tsar, that was an indication of the coming revolution in Russia itself. The government has been transformed in the last couple of weeks before our eyes into a kind of chumocracy. That's the chums of Boris Johnson who are cashing in of jobs for the boys and the girls, while the masses are at the gates of number 10 Downing Street demanding measures that will uplift and solve the problems of working people. This is against the background of massive discontent in these months and a year of the pandemic. There are dire and worsening conditions in Britain. George Monbiot, a left commentator on events in Britain, has actually said before we offer solutions, we have to recognise that the US political system may not be fixable. The system is constitutionally padlocked. What is that but an expression of the deep crisis of world capitalism, of US capitalism itself? The Supreme Court is in the power of money. This may tie the hands, he says, of bidding. in relation to offering a new deal to the American working class. Of course, we and our co-thinkers in America will be doing everything in our power to change that situation and force them through the power of the labour movement to change the position and act in the interests of working people. However, the depth and character of this organic, deep crisis of capitalism, because that's what it is, compels mass action, or the mass of the working class will be forced significantly into the gutter. The system only briefly, barely surviving on the mountain of debt that is being built up. The future prospects for this system, there's no light at the end of the tunnel. You only have to open the Financial Times today with a headline: young workers and students suffer most from COVID economic fallout. Of an item on the teachers in Britain, where teachers hand out food as well as feeding minds. That's in the eye. That's just one little reflection of the depths of the crisis of British capitalism, and that doesn't take into account the world crisis of capitalism that we will be dealing with in this socialism event. The future prospects for this system, there is no light at the end of a very dark tunnel. This is really a reflection of the stagnation, at best, of world capitalism. There are no real reserves upon which it can call. It's stagnation. It means that, in effect, they will confront protests by working people at the conditions and revolutionary explosions. This is like, as one commentator said, the bourgeois, the capitalists, in the measures that they're undertaking, are playing with fire in a wooden house. That's the reality of world capitalism today. The political contortions of the different capitalist governments reflects this. Obviously, in the case of Trump himself, he actually flirted with the idea of a coup against the results of the American election. But then the opposition was too visible, too open, and he appears for the time being to have retreated, although he's taking his time to hand over to the legitimate government of Biden. And by the way, that has stoked up enormous anger of the masses. It's not yet played out in America. And this is against the background, let us remember, in a period when it can get worse than the current situation, where mass unemployment is organic, is rooted in the system now. For instance, in Britain, there's been a 400% increase of those on the minimum wage. So some have jobs, some don't have jobs. 2 million who are on the minimum wage, who are below the minimum wage. The new poor going to the food banks, which now includes, as we've seen, sections of the middle class. There's the looting of the state by, as I've mentioned, by the new capitalists who are trying to cash in on the new developments that could combat the pandemic itself. It's same in relation to the NHS. Even at this time, the NHS, by the so-called providers, and that's code for those private interests who are trying to cash in on the NHS at our expense. Even the NHS providers, so-called, are trying to make a fortune out of leeching on the NHS itself. We hoped, I'm sure you did as well, that the development of this vaccine would offer a certain relief. It can offer a certain relief. We welcome the development of the vaccines, but it must above all be free to the mass of the working class. We shouldn't have any divisions between working people, young and old, poor and not so poor. It should be a universal service, because we have developed this vaccine, that's you and me and the working class, have developed through the genius of the working class and the resources that have been built up by the NHS in many examples. These developments and the growing class anger will blow away the massive accumulating discontent that exists at the moment and raise the possibility of the need for struggle, because we will not get what we want on the basis of merely asking for it from the government or from our leaders for that matter. But now there is a semi-permanent right-wing populist movement in the US that can make a comeback if the labour movement does not offer an alternative. There's a colossal mountain of problems which could overwhelm and engulf working people and society. Struggle is inevitable, and mass resistance, whether we demand it or not, is inevitable amongst working people here, in America, in Europe and worldwide. You only have to open a newspaper and see from Marseille to Germany, there is a battle taking place now where the working class are expressing their opposition to the system and their failure to solve the problems that they confront. In other words, we face the outline of a mass resistance to the attempt to impose the costs of this on the shoulders of the working class. We have to resist, but we have to go further than that. We have to raise the necessity for an alternative economic and social system. That's what this event is about, of socialism, of a planned economy that can begin to solve the problems of working people. All the elements are there to bring together the resources in the form of the workplace and also of the enormous ingenuity of the British working class and the working class worldwide, but only if we abolish this dysfunctional system. You cannot proceed to progress on the basis of the perpetuation of the old system that has failed the working class, that has failed the middle class, that has failed the people of Britain, the people of Europe and of the world. You only have to examine the incredible antics of Johnson, the arrogance of a public schoolboy and his fellow co-thinkers. He's got no answer to the problems that face the working class at the moment. And moreover, he seems to be out of control by the class that he represents, that is the capitalist class itself. We are entering, comrades, an explosive period in which the faults of capitalism can be laid even more bare to the mass of the working class. That's why there's an interest in this event now. We must go further and make an appeal to every worker, to every young person in particular with their lives before them, that we offer a program, a policy, a perspective for the working class and the labour movement itself. This is an explosive period in which capitalism can reveal its faults very quickly. The economic situation which we've touched on, the incredible corruption at the heart of all the governments of capitalism, the massive subsidies that they are giving to their own class and not to the working class, the looting of the state, because there is a massive looting taking place, as many commentators have pointed out, like George Monbiot, where there's a holding down of the wages of the working class, but there's a looting of the state with colossal subsidies to big business. I could spend all my time given the figures, but they're easily accessible in the pages of the capitalist press. There is no lifeline on the horizon for capitalism. It will stagger from one crisis to another. One thing is certain: they intend that the mass of the population, the working class, will pay for this crisis. Look at the rising cost of putting workers on furlough. Look at the tragedy of youth unemployment. For one young worker to be out of a job is criminal. I saw the 1980s. I've seen many crises in Britain when the youth suffered. This is one of the worst, both in its potential and its effects. Every family in Britain, my family, has been affected and we're not prepared to put up with it. Look at the situation of homelessness now, where millions are on the verge of being thrown out of their houses because they can't pay the rent. The government has come forward with no programme. We say organise a systematic homelessness movement and resist being evicted from your home. That's a basic right of a human being. Look at the position in the local councils now. We have a tremendous record, second to none, in relation to the idea that the councils should be platforms for struggle, not to cozy up to big business and the government. That's why we conducted the tremendous struggle in Liverpool in relation to the council there that resisted the attacks of Thatcher. And remember, this was the party that defeated Thatcher not once, but twice, that reduced the Iron Lady to iron filings with the massive movement of the working class. And as a result, we grew to at least 8,000 members, in which we had a semi-mass influence. Those days are as nothing compared to what stands before you in this explosive period that is opening up. There's no lifeline for capitalism on the horizon. The only certainty is the masses will be asked to pay with more pain, more suffering, and we are not prepared to put up with that. More homelessness. Look at the position of Croydon Council, which is really now going under because of its mountain of debt. Croydon should do what Liverpool did and defy the government, and then call for a coalition of councils to do the same throughout Britain. If you look at the way that Tusk is trying to organise, that's the trade union and socialist coalition, and that is linked to the shenanigans, because that's what they are, the shameful behaviour of the right within the Labour Party in the recent days, where, for instance, Jeremy Corbyn is at one day let back into the Labour Party, then is denied the Labour whip we have heard. It's a scandal, the way Jeremy Corbyn has been treated. And remember, this is from Keir Starmer, who in a recent letter to the CBI, the Confederation of British Industry, said he wanted a new partnership with business, reminding them that as shadow Brexit secretary, he had pursued policies by implication backing a second referendum. And if you know, that was really a second referendum to go into the EU. Starmer is an unalloyed right-winger. His left phrases cover really the demand for a national government. And a national government is another name for a Tory government in disguise. Look at the national government of 1931. We are going to resist that. We have tried to convince some trade union leaders like Lenny McCluskey. He's shown his real colours now, Starmer, in the last day, by first of all agreeing that Jeremy Corbyn should rejoin the Labour Party, and then because of the pressure of the right, it seems now is saying no, he will not get the Labour whip. That's a form of exclusion from the Labour Party. If the Labour Party proceeds in this way, we've had meetings with Lenny McCluskey. We have a member of the leadership of the Unite speaking at this meeting here today, of Howard Beckett, who's part of the leadership of that movement. And we say quite clearly, either take a clear position in relation to the right within the Labour Party. There is no possibility of compromise with these people. There's no compromise with Margaret Hodge, a representative of the open right wing from the times when we were in Islington, Labour Party, myself and Linda Taaffe, me nominally, her much more actively. These people will not rest until they've driven every left winger out of the party. We say we're going to defeat you either by helping to transform, and that's not completely ruled out, although it seems very, very unlikely now in the light of what Starmer's done in the last couple of days, or more likely begin to lay the foundations by building Tusk of a new mass party of the working class. That's the only hope for working people. So, comrade chairman and comrades, prepare for the mass alternative. That's what this event here is about today. My faith in the British working class and the world working class is as undimmed as it was more than 50 years ago, when we went into the regions of Liverpool and we won a base amongst the working class, when we shook the ruling class to its foundations, when we defeated the poll tax, and we did defeat the poll tax. Thatcher herself was removed from office as a result of that. When we built a powerful mass non-payment campaign, who's to say you can't do that again today? There's enough explosive social material in Britain. The time now is to seize the opportunities. Let's make this event here this weekend a great success in terms of attendance, but let's turn it into combatants and members of the Socialist Party, and in that way build the foundations of a new, exciting force in Britain that will change the lives, that will transform the lives of the working class, above all of the youth who are looking for an alternative now. Why do I say that? Because we have the clarity of ideas. We tell the truth about capitalism and of those who are hanging on to the coattails of capitalism. We support all of those who are prepared to fight, but we say examine the programme upon which we need to fight. If we approach it in the right way, we will build a powerful organisation. Take no notice of the poisonous purveyors of poison, like Andrew Rawnsley in The Observer. Every article he writes is dripping in poison, either against us or against Jeremy Corbyn. Say it has as much effect as water on a hot stove. We base ourselves on the approval or otherwise of the working class. And when they hear our ideas, they actually embrace them. What kind of Labour leader is prepared to call himself a Sir? Sir Keir Starmer. That's enough as far as I am concerned. He's not a real Labour leader, and it's one of the things that we have a difference with some of those in Unite. We need to create a new force, a new party, a new leadership that's prepared to go to the end in fighting capitalism and creating a new planned economy. What is a socialism? It's the planned utilisation of all the resources of society, and in that way to transform the leadership, the position of the working class. We are going to see a certain lifting of the lockdown. Let's see that happens in the not too distant future. That will provide a period for us to work much more openly. We've achieved miracles. It's enormous. I'm enormously proud of the members of the Socialist Party, particularly the younger comrades who in the teeth of great difficulties have built a basis for a new socialist movement in Britain. Let's go to it now with power and with strength and with a conviction that we're going to win the British working class to our programme and the world working class and link up with them in a mighty movement internationally for world socialism, which is the only hope for humankind to get us out of this morass of crises, of pandemic and all the horrors of capitalism. So thank you very much, comrades.